Welcome to lecture 1.3, and this lecture is our introduction to sustainability. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to do three things, and this will all sort of work into helping you complete your first homework assignment as well. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to define sustainability. So if someone were to ask you, well, what is sustainability? You should be able to pretty concisely tell them what it is. You should be able to define what the three components of sustainability are and identify major sustainability issues that are currently facing our civilization, our globe, our society. So within that context, we have three key terms that you need to know and be able to define by the end of the lecture. And obviously one is sustainability, but within that there are three components to sustainability: environmental, economic, and social. So I want you to be able to say, what is environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, and social sustainability. Another key term that we're going to start discussing in this lecture and continue discussing throughout the semester is this idea of a system and what systems are. Systems are key to sustainability, and so really it's going to be part of every lecture. So I just put it here, but it will continue to be a key term throughout the semester. And then finally, there's this term of the Brundtland, and Brundtland is a city, and it is where we sort of first formally, I guess, defined sustainability. Okay, so what is sustainability? Well, first of all, it's really important for everybody to understand that there are many different definitions for sustainability, and a lot of it is context specific. So if you're talking to a biologist versus a sociologist versus an economist, they're probably going to have different definitions of sustainability. In this course, we're mostly interested in what sustainability is within the context of what is a sustainable Earth. What is it going to take for us to have sustainable environments, sustainable societies, and sustainable economies? And the key question that we will be answering in this course is, can our civilization persist on its current path? Can we continue to do the things that we're doing, live the level of standard of living that we are living, and anticipate that our society, our civilization will be around as it currently is in 100 years, 200 years, 300 years? That's really what we will continue to ask ourselves and look at throughout the semester. All right, so before we move forward with actually defining sustainability, I want to go over a few assumptions that are important and that will govern a lot of what we do in this class. The first is that a sustainable system is not a system that is static. That means, what I mean by that is, when we talk about sustainability, it doesn't mean that we expect things to never change. In fact, healthy systems go through natural cycles and naturally change, and we expect that to happen, and we want it to happen in order for us a system to be sustainable. So the example I have on your slide here is, we have two pictures. We have a picture of the Konza Prairie in the fall, and we have a picture of the Konza Prairie in the spring. And obviously there are natural changes that have happened in the system, even though it is a fairly sustainable ecosystem. Another assumption is that no system is infinitely sustainable. We can't expect any system on our planet, or our planet as an entire system, to be sustainable forever. We have about 10 billion, scientists who study this believe that the sun will be a sustainable sun for about 10 billion years. And then once that runs out, the sun will cease to exist, which of course then means the Earth as we know it will cease to exist. So that is an example of how nothing is infinitely sustainable. The other assumption of this class that's important is that it's very difficult to predict into the future. We know that. It's easier to predict what's going to happen in a year or 2 years or 5 years. But the further out we go, the more extended length of time we're into the future, the harder it is to make predictions. And that's important because a lot of what we talk about in sustainability is around sustainability is um, what is the earth going to be like in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 years from now. And so a lot of that is very difficult to predict. So because of that, we're actually, what we're going to focus on, the main, I said the main question we're looking at is, can our civilization continue to exist? Well, what we're really going to more narrowly focus in on is whether or not our modern societies are sustainable over the next 100 years. We're not going to try to predict 1,000 years out because that's impossible. So we're going to be looking at over the next 100 years, can we continue to have sustainable economies that function, sustainable societies that function? And, if we were to look at the year 2117, is the quality of life going to be similar then as it is now? That's about as far out as we can hope to really try to think through. Okay, so let's now look then at what is sustainability. How do we define sustainability? And I'm assuming that most of you have some familiarity with the term. It's discussed in a lot of classes and it's discussed in popular culture and the press. But I want you guys to be able, from an academic perspective, be able to talk to people what sustainability is. So first of all, sustainability is concerned with both people and our natural environments. It's not about sustaining people only, and it's not about sustaining our natural environments only. It's about the future of both people and our natural environments. It's also concerned with people who are alive today, all the people living on the planet in 2017, and all of the people who will, future generations. And in this class, we're thinking about it in a 100-year context, so future generations that are born within the next 100 years. And again, as I said, the big question is it sustainable for civilization to more or less continue on its current course, so that in 100 years we're looking at a lifestyle that's fairly similar to the lifestyle we have today? Well, it actually turns out that this is not an easy question to answer. So in 1972, there was a book published called The Limits to Growth by Meadows and Meadows. And in this book, they predicted that we would be completely out of petroleum and oil by the year 1992, that there would be none left on Earth, or none left that we could get access to. We now know, obviously, that this isn't true. This was grossly incorrect, and that we have enough oil or petroleum on the planet to last us at least several more decades, probably. And so how did that prediction go so wrong? So one of the things that we will be working on in this class is kind of discussing how can we figure out and decipher between good and bad predictions. How can we look at what is being published about what the future is going to be like, or how our behaviors are impacting the environment, and how can we critically think through these things and decipher if it is a good or bad prediction. Obviously, the prediction that we would be out of oil by 1992 was a bad prediction. But in 1972, would we have been able to critically think through that and realize that it would have been a bad prediction? All right, so in a minute, I'm going to have you pause the PowerPoint and answer this question. So, in the context of the environment, in the context of our economies, and in the context of our societies, what do you think are the most urgent sustainability issues? The issues that we need to focus on over the next 100 years. So, for example, you might write down climate change, increasing debt, and I don't know, racial strife as being some of the most urgent issues. That would cover environmental, economic, and social issues. So just pause the PowerPoint and write down a short list of issues and try to cover environmental, economic, and social issues. Okay, so hopefully you have a fairly good list now. And what I have here are examples of lists of sustainability priorities that different committees have developed at different points in time. So back in 1987, when we were really first starting to talk about sustainability, there was a group, a committee of international experts on the issue that got together and published something called Our Common Future. And in that publication, they identified these six issues as the priorities: population growth, food security, species, probably species extinction, energy, industry, and urban challenges. Then a little over a decade and a half, or a little less than a decade and a half after that, another group of experts came together and published another sustainability focused publication called An Achievable Agenda. And their list was health, agriculture, biodiversity, energy, and water. So you can see that there are some commonalities between here. Food security, agriculture, same thing. Species, biodiversity, same thing. But you can also see that in 2002, they identified water as a sustainability priority that in 1987 was not on the radar of these experts. So the list that you have, that you wrote down, probably has some of these issues. These are primarily focused on environmental issues. You probably have some more social and economic issues as well. One of the main points I wanted to make with this, though, is that what is considered to be the priority or a sustainability priority at any given point in time changes, because we have new information brought to us. We have, we have significant population changes. We have significant government changes, things like that change what priorities are, change what's happening, change where the concerns are. So there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer to what are sustainability priorities. In this particular class, we will be primarily focusing on population issues, food and agricultural issues, ecosystems, biodiversity, energy, and water. And we're really going to be looking at the interconnection between all of these issues, and what these priorities and issues mean in terms of sustainability, and how these things are going to really impact whether or not in 100 years we are going to be a sustainable society. The other thing that I'm going to keep saying over and over all semester long is that all of these issues are interconnected. You cannot solve one without solving another. And so we've got to continually throughout the semester think about sustainability from a systems perspective. And this course really is built on this idea of the earth being a system, and it being a system of environmental systems, social systems, and economic systems that are all interconnected and interwoven. And when we talk about problems and solutions, we have to realize this. We have to realize that when you solve an environmental problem or try to solve an environmental problem, there are social implications, economic implications. And so you have to think about what are those implications and how you can really consider how they all work together and solve these sustainability issues from this systems perspective. So next week we'll be looking at population and population growth. And one of the big things we're going to be looking at is how, it when you talk about the Earth being overpopulated, it's not just a simple matter of, well, let's let's make it so that people have fewer babies. It's so interconnected with environmental, social, and economic issues. So those are sort of the base. All of those that we just talked about in the last several slides are sort of the underlying assumptions that we are going to base our semester on. So finally, we get to talk about a definition of sustainability. So this sustainability definition that I have on this slide is from this Brundtland report, which was written in 1987. And it is probably the most commonly cited and discussed definition. So sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that's a definition. It's okay to cite that definition, but you need to make sure you understand that definition and that you can dissect it and you can really talk about, well, what does that mean? What meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. What are we doing right now in our daily lives that are perhaps compromising our children or our children's children from being able to meet their own needs 50 to 100 years from now? So a little bit more detail here. When we talk about sustainability, we talk about three components. Sometimes it's referred to as the three dimensions of sustainability, the three pillars, the three components. It doesn't matter to me. It's just what matters to me is that you understand that when we talk about sustainability, we're thinking about it from an environmental perspective, an economic perspective, and a societal perspective. And when we are truly thinking about all three of those systems and solving problems with the framework of those three systems in the middle where they all overlap, that is when we can achieve sustainability. So if you solve a problem that's facing, say you solve an economic problem, and you consider how it is going to impact the economy and society, but you forget about how it's going to impact the environment, you don't have sustainability because you have two of the components, but not the third component. And that same scenario can be said for any different combination there. When we work towards devising solutions to problems in this class, we're going to constantly be thinking about all three components. So what are those three components? Well, of course, we have the environmental component. Environmental sustainability is sustainability that really is focused on how can we maintain all of Earth's natural life support systems? How can we, maintain our water resources, all of the biodiversity, the plants, the animals that we depend on for services. How can we maintain energy systems, etc. Within our economic component of the triad, we are looking at how to maintain an economic system that is sustainable in the sense that we have a standard of living that does not decline. We want healthy economic systems that provide the economic resources that people need for a high quality standard of living that is equitable across all communities, all people. So when we're trying to solve economic sustainability issues, we're really looking at everything around money, capital, employment, technology, our market, our investments, things like that. And then finally, we have our social component of our triad. And in our social component, we are really looking at how can we develop communities that foster engagement and participation and equity and honor individuals that live within those societies. So we're looking at issues of quality of life, human diversity. We're looking at institutional structures like schools and um, our government structures, our political structures, and whether or not they are sustainable and are fostering effective participation of stakeholders, of people. Okay, so those are that's the essence of sustainability, and we will continue to work through that. And at this point, you have a basic understanding of sustainability, and you would be able to tell somebody else what sort of the basic underlying definition of sustainability is. You should be able to talk about environmental, economic, and social issues within sustainability. Um, and by the end of the semester, you will have a lot more details to add to that. So you'll have a much stronger holistic definition that you'll be able to come with. All right, so almost just to sort of conclude here, um, here we have 3 questions. And these are, again, 3 questions that we will continue to discuss throughout the semester. Can we continue to have the sort of lifestyle that those of us living in modern economies like the United States have become accustomed to? And can those in developing countries expect to catch up and experience similar lifestyles to those of us? Or do we have to revert to the past to have a sustainable system? That's a really big question. That's a really loaded question. It's not a question we can answer right now, but I hope that we can have these discussions throughout the semester and really reflect back on those questions by the end of the semester. Or are we going to have to muddle through these things? Will we, one of the biggest things that we often hear about is that technology is going to solve our problems. Technology is going to find substitutes for fossil fuels. So when we run out of oil, it doesn't matter because we have a technological development to take its place. Will we find technology that will be able to somehow remove greenhouse gases from our atmosphere so that we do not have increasing global temperatures? Will we find new sources of energy that we never knew were sources of energy? So those are other really big questions that we are going to ponder and think through as our semester develops. We really are going to learn a lot about our planet and what's currently happening in our planet, the trends in terms of everything from energy to population to water, and really some facts about what's happening and where we're headed and what to worry about if we don't change course, etc. So just to conclude today's lecture, this is a list of sort of the major topics that we will cover in this class. Next week, we're going to start with population. We're going to spend some time talking about climate change, which is very relevant in the summer of 2017. Energy, water, we're going to look at economic systems and our consumption levels and sort of some future trends. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what direction we're going and also helps you better understand what sustainability is and how it relates to what we're doing in this class.